handler has instructed us we need to talk about the game just a little bit more.
A little bit more about
this
the
game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this game. God of War.
Coming up with different ways to kill people and each
Oh,
other.
but you know what?
secret there?
This is coming up, which is great. I'll say this is the kind of stuff that
Dreams are made
No,
of.
yeah, it's like, seriously, that me and Todd working just, after the level was built, we were just like, how do we make this level fun? And just the idea of having these Cyclops be really tough, and then the solution being there's no health chest, there's no health. You have to basically kill the civilians in order to get enough health to survive the fight, unless the fight's really easy for you. I love that. I mean, I love the fact that part of the gameplay is, basically be brutal and kill these innocents in order to survive.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that at the beginning of
People were like, oh, give them choices, let them be good or bad. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want you to be this character.
But also how to force them to do that.
Yeah.
And whether it be just built into the story or if they would have to do something, some action.
Yeah, so the more places we could find where the player pretty much had to do it, the happier I was. And I know, like I said, people were like, oh, you should make it like some other games where you can choose to be good or choose to be bad. I don't know. I mean, I guess the kind of games I like are just different, but I like playing games. Oh, there's a bug. I like playing games where the character is a lot more defined. I don't really want to play a game, or at least a story-based game, where it's like, oh, you can make him whatever you want him to be. It's like, well, I don't know. It's just me. Some of my favorite games are ones which I guess I can't talk about specifically, but where they are it's very clear who they are as characters. And I love some of the characters in third-person action games. Especially this generation, the PlayStation 2 has had some of the best games in the genre, and some of the best characters in the genre, which again, damn it, I can't tell you who they are, or who I think they are, but they're darn cool.
So this was an example of a time when it was supposed to be even more brutal than it turned out to be. But
This was?
yeah, I think you had to interact with her, or didn't you at one point you stabbed her? You threw out the blades at her?
I don't know. I think you pushed her.
Yeah, that's something like that.
But yeah, I mean, it was really tough to come up with a lot of these ways to get the character across. And I love that, though. I love that the NPCs in the game are, they see him and they call him the Ghost of Sparta, and they clearly, he has this history and his reputation travels with him when he goes. And I think that's really cool, because as a player, it's like, the whole idea was I had hoped players would want to know, like, why are they responding to him this way, and sort of what's up with him, so. I'm tired.
Yeah, it's been a long process of making this commentary.
No, I'm just, yeah.
He really wasn't trying to tie it into this at all. He just wanted you to know
I'm
he's
just telling you,
tired.
I'm tired.
It's a fun game to watch.
It is. It's nice to watch. I think, it's a great looking game. They did a great job. Let's talk about this. We are, what is today? February 14th. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Hey, this is perfect. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to call our spouses on the speakerphone and see how they felt about us working on God of War. So
A lot of stuff happened during the production of God of War. We had 2 births.
Yeah, my kid was born.
We had
Okay,
2
this
marriages.
is my wife, and then we're going to call Todd's wife.
2 marriages, 2 births.
Oh, we're running out of time?
Actually,
okay, we'll
more.
do that. We'll do that in the next segment.
We had more than 2 marriages.
More than 2 marriages.
We had 4.
4 marriages.
Who got married? Well, it doesn't matter. They don't.
Gio, Nick, Stig, and I.
And
So
Shannon.
And Shannon. There's a lot of people getting married, a lot of kids. Did anybody get divorced?
No? One of the problems that we had, in particular with this level, was the technical difficulties, and also, I think, the scope that we had.
This level was huge when you guys first designed it.
Yeah.
It was enormous.
And one of the things that we had was trying to introduce characters, in particular the dive skellies and shield skeletons in this area. We're going to have one of them pulling a woman around a corner, and you'd always be running around trying to catch up to them, but you'd never fully catch up to them. Then they would brutally kill the woman, and then you'd have the fight. So similar to this, but
It's actually kind of funny how if you look at a lot of games that are doing sort of these in-game storytelling devices. There's a lot of cliches. It's like, the guy's running and they're running towards you and they get killed all of a sudden in an explosion, or there's a character in the distance and you're constantly trying to keep up with that character. It's like, and I don't think it's lack of imagination. I think it's you have to come up with all of these sort of boundaries so that the player can't actually catch up with some of these sort of in-game animations that are happening that we put in to make it feel like you're living in the story.
Yeah, because they're not going to change if you run through the
Yeah,
middle.
we got to make sure the player can never actually reach them or interact with them, or obviously the whole story changes and gets messed up. So, which, a lot of games are doing that now. Instead of doing it scripted, it's being done with AI, so it can change. But certainly in this game, we wanted to make sure, the story was being told, and it was sort of being told in a certain way.
Actually, one of the things that I think worked out real well was the scene that we have back here of Ares walking by.
Yeah, that just
That's
works.
awesome.
That's like an example of what we wanted to do everywhere.
But that stuff takes forever. I was surprised. I was just like, oh, let's get 30 of these in a level. And from a memory standpoint and from a time standpoint, it's just everything takes forever. Which was just like surprising to me on this kind of game. I didn't think it would take as long as it did, but it did. Now here's coming up. I don't know if they're going to show it. These guys, yeah, look at this. I thought this sequence on the bridge where these guys get hit by the fireball was just going to be the biggest, coolest thing in the world, and it doesn't even register.
Yeah.
You have to really, if you play it exactly like we intended you to play it, it works great if you run after them.
Yeah, it's really
But
dramatic.
the chances of that happening are pretty slim.
Yeah, whereas Ares walking in the background where everyone's going to see it every single time ended up working a lot better.
I think because we were always very reluctant to take away control from the player whenever we didn't have to.
Yeah.
Even though we do at some point.
And this was this was a level that turned out to be, we focus tested tons of the levels all the time, and this was a level that started out, it was like, what do you give this level 1 to 10 was what we asked them at the end of every session. And this level for the longest time was just stuck in the 3s and 4s. People did not like the rooftops of Athens at all. And something, and I don't know if it was any one thing or if it was just a lot of little fixes here and there, but towards the very end we started getting 9s and 10s in this level, and people really, really started to like this level, which is great. I'm so grateful because it comes at a point in the game where we really need to keep the player interested.
Well, I think the player knowing that there was another path, and
yeah, that's true.
That was the whole thing where we wanted to kind of make the player explore a little bit more, but most players weren't putting 2 and 2 together.
Oh, right, between getting the Zeus Thunderbolt and killing the guy with the lever.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or even finding that there was another path. They would just keep on searching the rooftops over and over and over again.
And a lot of it is the kind of players you get. If you get players that play games in this genre, they totally understood, okay, now it must be time to explore and look around. But other players that we got in for focus tests were just like, they wanted a bit more hand-holding, and it's like, oh, you mean I got to go look around for something? It's like, well, yeah, that's, part of what makes it feel like you're on an adventure.
Oh, and coming up with this puzzle, too.
Oh, my God, this puzzle changed so many times.
I remember you guys pulled me over to test it, and I finished it in like a couple minutes, and then you guys went right back to the drawing board.
No, what it was...
Because I'm so good.
No,
You should never have me test any
This
puzzle.
puzzle is either really hard for people or they get it right away. Like, whenever we had the programmers come over, they played it, and immediately they got it. And we had a lot of designers and artists come over, and remember, it took sometimes it took people 20 minutes. They couldn't figure it out. So I think it's a certain kind of logic that you have to apply that if you're just not used to thinking that way, it's not too easy. But I love this puzzle. I think it's
originally it was just a single pull, and that was really easy.
Originally, this was a room where you had to, I think we had talked about having, bells you had to hit in the right order to create this frequency that shattered this crystal door of Zeus. I mean, there were so many, and this was at the very end. And
Yeah, there were so many different variations.
But the thing was, it was a single pull, and then you added a
Alex,
second pull.
yes, it was. That's right.
You doubled the difficulty
That-
instantly. It was great.
That's right. That's right, Alex.
See, Alex is actually a programmer in some parts.
I know how to multiply at times too.
That's right. So.
Oh.
This is actually one of the best, I think, camera angles in the game. It just really shows off the game.
Thanks, Alex. So, I think, like I said, this is the hardest game I've worked on. I think we had... I'm trying to think... I know we didn't have any fist fights in this game.
No.
I think there were definitely there's a lot of verbal abuse on this game. It was not a very healthy environment. If we had a therapist here, or a psychiatrist, they'd just be like, oh my God, you guys are totally dysfunctional. But I mean, I don't know. That's what it takes, I guess. But
I think it's good because we were all passionate about the game, or about how much we hated you.
Or about
you know
that
what?
camera shot.
Let me just say something. If I had any interest in sort of building a reputation as a game director, it's all shot now after God of War. It's just like, would you work with Jaffe again? Hell no. That's all right. That's all right. I'm so happy with the product. It doesn't matter. If this is the last game I ever get to make, I'm quite proud.
And it probably will be.
It probably will. Until I take over the one we have in development right now.
Yeah, I think that's a certainty.
Now, well, of course, we all know that.
What are you doing to my character?
That's right.
Well, I know Dave and Tim, our lead programmer,
Oh my
had
God, we
tons
fought.
and tons and tons of fights over this level in particular.
Why did we have a fight over this level?
Because the draw distance and being able to see.
Oh, and
all
frame
the-
rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The huge frame rate issues. Being able to see stuff in the distance and culling issues of enemies and.
I think him and I also fought over modularity. I mean, as a programmer, and you know, again, I'm not a programmer, but just talking to them, I get the sense that there's sort of a passion for what is the word? Is it eloquency? Is that
Elegance.
A kind of
simplicity.
A simplicity in systems and things that really work together. I think there's kind of a sense of pride and a sense of there being a value to that. Whereas I really could care less. I don't care if everything in the whole game is special case. I mean, I do from a practical standpoint, but from a standpoint of pride, all I care about is sort of the end result. And
Well, I don't think it was just pride. I think it was opening a can of worms that you didn't have to open. If everything is unique, it makes it that much harder to
Yeah,
get
but
it
if
working.
everything's unique, for me as a player, I don't get that bored.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's the
that's the
trade-off.
pro,
The
but the
holy
con is
grail
that
of it all is to have everything look unique, but still have a system of modularity so that you can get a lot of things in the game.
If you can, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is for me is I've just been playing a lot of games in the genre, and after about the second hour, you've pretty much seen it all. And every now and then they'll throw you a bone, they'll throw you something special case, but, you know, maybe that goes back to what we were talking about. Maybe I would rather have a 3-hour game where 80% of it is I'm seeing new content and new ideas, and after 3 hours I'm done. Versus, you know, to stretch that 3-hour game out to 20 hours or 30 hours, but in essence it's pretty much the same game, it just gets a little harder, or they throw some new enemies, or it's every now and then they'll throw you a novelty. I get bored of that, you know? I mean, I'd rather just, you know, I don't know, imagine it, I mean, I know it's not a movie, but imagine if it was a movie and it's like, half of your scenes were pretty much saying the same thing and showing you the same thing. It's like, okay, I get it. You know, I get that this is a sneaking game. I get this is a combat game. Give me something new. And I definitely think that led to some disagreements and fights with sort of that isn't always doesn't always line up into the way games are produced, because games rely on modularity in order to get them completed. Mechanics, right? And I think that probably is what led to a lot of tension. Because, I mean, Twisted Metal, for example, the other game I've worked on, those games are a lot more modular. And sure, we had fights and conflicts on those games, but nothing like on this. Because in that game, once you build one level, it's pretty much the same game with a little bit of changes here and there.
There's a lot of feathers and eyes in this video. That's what you're into.
That's right. That's right, Alex. So, one of the things I think that's interesting or curious to me is sort of the puzzle design in this game. I got a lot of crap from people originally. In fact, there were some T-shirts people made up or some posters. It was like, it was God of War, and there was a pressure plate, and there was a crank, and there was a push bar, and it was like and a lever, and it's like, you know what? I got to say, I'm proud of the puzzles that the team came up with and that I helped come up with in this game. I think they're pretty cool. Puzzles are really tough to make, and
especially on an ancient Greek game.
I mean, there's so many.
There's no levers or there's nothing technical. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Aside from the levers that we had in the game.
Yeah. Well, those were pretty technical.
Right. But I mean, I think the puzzles are more. I mean, you know, if you look at a lot of games today, and I've said this to the press when we've talked about this game, a lot of puzzles today is you pull a lever and a door opens somewhere, and that's a puzzle. Which I mean, I know no one thinks that's a puzzle, but that constitutes something to do. Or pull a lever and it's a red. I mean, it's very rudimentary stuff. So on that end, I think our puzzles are pretty strong. I do regret that, you know, we use the traditional vocabulary of levers and push blocks and pressure plates, but it's kind of like, you know, you know, the fact that we added the Medusa head, you know, where you freeze enemies on a pressure plate, or we're using blocks to do more than just put blocks on a pressure plate. We're stacking those, or we're plugging holes with those. I definitely think they're a little stronger, if not a lot stronger, than a lot of games in the genre. But certainly, I mean, I think, you know, I'd love to go back and kind of have more time with them. But I'm pretty proud of them. I think they worked out pretty well.
Well, we also tried some stuff with checkpoints and how you would resource your health, and using the Medusas to use them as magic fountains, and using the Minotaurs as health fountains, and trying to get more mental meat that way. And players weren't getting it, or they would just think it was too tough.
But I do think that was a big thing that you and I, when we started doing the enemy layout, was really important, which was wanting to make absolutely sure that the player, it just didn't fall into sort of hack and slash land where every room was just hitting enemies and there was really nothing else to think about. Because I think that's where it's really easy to lose the audience in a game like this, where it's just, oh, let's throw in some more rooms and put some enemies in. The fighting, even though I think the fighting is great in this game, if we would just given you rooms and it was just fighting those rooms, I think players would have gotten really bored after about an hour or so.
Yeah.
So I think the puzzles and the exploration and the platforming really do help to break up the fighting. And as cool and deep as the fighting is, I do think you can play it as a hack and slash game, which I'm totally comfortable with. That's how I like to play games like this. But that's why I'm glad the puzzles and the other elements are there as well. And they're tough to design too.
Yeah.
I mean, after, you know, good lord, we've been in this game forever, and it's just like you get taxed. Your brain just runs out of ideas. You know?
Well, setting up all the scenarios after a while, you really do start running out of ideas.
Yeah. Now this was a puzzle and focus test. I don't know if it's in the movie here, but we had to actually add a line of Kratos saying, "I'll never get across with all these harpies," because people were just not getting that they had to plug the holes. People would literally spend like 40 minutes when we watched them play the game down there just trying to kill the harpies over and over and over. And it was like finally we just pretty much had to ram it down their throats and say, look, you're not going to make it this way. And
It's the only time we ever had him talk to himself.
No, there was another time when he said, talking to himself.
Yeah, to sort of help the player.
Yeah.
We did it with Athena a lot, but
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that stuff. Like when you fill up your Rage of the Gods meter, and it's like, oh, you hear Athena's voice come over and say the gods have given you power and stuff.
And even later in this same puzzle, the Oracle gives you a hint. But
no, we got rid of that.
Oh, you got
She
rid
says
of
you
it.
have to use both statues. We had that, but I mean, it's funny. It's just the stuff that when you design it, you make all these assumptions, which is really bad.
But luckily, it's mostly just plugging holes. I mean, we didn't have to redesign that whole harpy puzzle. We just had to give
It's
a
a lot
little
of
bit of a hint.
that's what all the focus testing was about. It was like little band-aids. This whole game hangs together quite well, but it's hanging together with you know,
Duct tape.
and 3-day-old band-aids. You know, I mean, it's really nasty, but you blow on it wrong and it falls apart. But I think all the focus testing really saved us because we got to see where people were just totally not getting stuff that we thought they would get. See, I love this puzzle. I think it's a great puzzle. I think it's really, really cool. I think it ties into the story well, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Especially once you get up to the top and you start getting that frantic feeling of I got to get around, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I wish we could have had more.
See, is that wrong? People, I don't know, let's just go off the game now and let's talk about me again. I mean, I don't understand. I'm so sensitive to it, I think, because I've been, that's my goal. I should stay off the message boards because they get me riled up. But it's like, for me to even sit here and say, oh, I like that puzzle, or I'm proud of that puzzle, right? I've seen people say, oh, the God of War team, and specifically Jaffe, oh, he's full of himself because he's like tooting his own horn. It's like, when is it not, maybe I was raised with an inordinate amount of self-esteem, or these guys on the internet that I'm specifically speaking about have no self-esteem. But it's like, it's not okay to basically say you're proud of something you've done. Do you have to have this false modesty and go, oh, I don't think it's very good, when you really do?
I think that's a good idea.
Is it a good idea?
Always say something's not really good if it's really good.
What's that? I don't
Of course
understand.
not. I don't think you should have that false modesty. I just don't
I'm
think
not
you should
saying- I'm not
argue on
saying
the.
they'll think it's good.
I just don't think you should argue on the internet.
I
Yeah.
like arguing. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Who knew that Dave liked to argue?
I know. Arguing's
It is.
fun.
Oh, that
But
Dave
you know what? It
Jaffe,
goes back
he's
when
got
I was
such
a
an ego.
What's that?
That's one thing I wish we could have fixed in the movie. It's square,
There
and
we
then what you're
go.
landing on is the round or the elliptical.
Trying to get
Is it
these
really?
high-res
Yeah.
movies to match the game is something we started out
we gave
trying.
up on that.
We had to give up on eventually, just because
What's that? Oh, Tim, the lead programmer, just walked in. He needs
Yeah.
Todd. to
once
fix
again
something.
he's jerking us back to reality.
That's right.
Yeah, apparently the game's still not done.
I know the game's almost done. Not yet.
But anyway, these movies, the high-res ones, they took a long time to develop. So trying to get them to match the game, at a certain point, we knew they were going to diverge, and we just.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I think the movies really, again, God forbid. I do. I think the movies look really good. I think
Yeah.
everybody involved did a great job. So I think they look really cool.
Yeah,
so
they do. I think they tell the story really well.
Yeah, I love that bridge. I love that whole sequence.
Is that a good camera angle?
That's a great camera angle. That was a great. I think she did. Jessica.
Yeah,
just
Jessica did a great
amazing
job throughout this game
Yeah.
for being single-handedly.
Yeah, we had
do it.
one camera person for the most part, and she did awesome. So the sewers, this was actually a level that we forced you to fight. Like you had the sort of Hades walls that came up, or the Ares walls that came up, and you had to kill everybody to progress. And there was like 3 or 4 of those in the sewers. And again, it was just. I think what we found when we were testing the game before we finished it was just there was too much stop and start, and there's definitely a sense that players want to have challenges and they want to get stuck for a little bit, but then they want to have, or I felt that they wanted to after that kind of open it up a little bit and have a good 10 to 30 minutes where they were just making progress, so that the next time they got stuck, they had some road underneath their wheels basically, and that was a real kind of constantly evolving process of where do we kind of put up barricades that we know are going to be difficult, and where do we just let the player run. And what's interesting though is even though we got rid of those Ares walls, players would still stand and fight every single enemy. For me, when I play games like this, if I'm just kind of like either tired of the fighting or I want to progress, I'll just keep running through. But most players when we tested this, they would just, even though they died over and over, they just kind of fight their way through the whole sewer. So
There's a sense of wanting to be complete when you.
yeah, a lot of people talked about that. They want to find everything and kill everything, and
And they don't want to feel like you're making them stop. They'll stop
Right.
more. They're more apt to stop if, they're stopping of their own volition instead of like feeling like, hey, now you're going to stop again. Now you're going to stop again. It feels a lot more forced. So.
The other thing I like about this level that it turned out so well is that it really originally wasn't even designed. This level was.
it was
sort of like a patch to keep things from having to have a load when
No,
we
no,
redesigned
no, it
that.
was designed. It was just it was just basically a fighting corridor. That's all it was.
But I think it got a lot longer because we cut out some parts of Athens and we had to get back to the Oracle.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
No. Sorry, Alex.
Well, I think I remember better.
You only question Dave Jaffe.
I think one of the things interesting is when I went to E3 about 2 years into development, there was a game based on a big movie, which I won't go into, but it was a big fantasy movie that was a big hit. And I actually don't think this game ever came out. It wasn't one of the big ones. There was a couple of different companies making games on this title, and I was studying a lot of the games in the genre because I wanted to see how other games stopped you from just bypassing the combat. And so I went to this guy's game, the producer was standing next to me, and I just took the guy and I started just running, and I wouldn't fight anything. And halfway through, he looked at me, he's like, well, why aren't you, he's like baffled, he's like, why aren't you fighting? And I was like, I just wanted to see, if you guys had come up with any way to stop me from just running through your game. And, clearly he hadn't, because his face just kind of went white, like, I never thought about that. But
Dave had time to start working on other companies' games during production of God of
No,
War.
because that's something to think about when you're doing a game like this, is what if a player just wants to run straight past the enemies? And it's like Cory said, you don't want to force them to fight everywhere. But I think it's a balance. It's like you need to sometimes slow things down intentionally, and other times just assume that the player's going to do it on his own. A couple things interesting. That shot there, and we have this a couple times in the game where Kratos gets really, really small, and I can't, again, damn it, I can't say what games they are, but back when I was a kid on the old PC games back in like the early 80s, a lot of adventure games kind of had those perspectives where your character would get really small, and I just always loved that, and I wanted to make sure we kind of had that epic sense that you were still controlling your guy, but the world around you was just epic and huge. And
we used a shot like that to open the E3 demo.
yeah, when you run across the bridge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which really helped.
Some people like that, some people don't, but I mean, this was another level that we almost cut, the whole idea of an audio puzzle where you're having to sort of use your ears to figure out how to get through. And I did not want to let this go. And I think individually as a puzzle in and of itself, or as a piece of gameplay, it's good, it's decent, it's okay. But I think in the context of the whole game, there's something about this that for me feels like a big, epic adventure. And that work. I mean, that, like, sometimes that works that way. Is that, it's all of these levels are obviously pieces of a bigger whole. And again, we do these reviews, and people will be like, I don't really like that level, and you'd feel really bad. But then you'd get this great final review on the whole game, and it's like, it's just individual sequences may not work for them, but when they all come together, I think it really seems to have added up. We'll see. I mean, right now we're at Valentine's Day. The game comes out in a month, a little bit later. That's very scary. We're coming out the same day as Sony's new hardware, the PSP. We're coming out the same month as some other really huge games, one of which is in our genre, a game I think that we all really like, that we're all fans of. So, I mean, man, that's tough. You spend 3 years and a lot of time, and you have you just it's at the mercy of players, and you hope they like it, and you hope they buy it.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that stuff. The release date is set, and that's going to determine quite a bit, I think, sales. But reaction to the demo and to people who've played games at E3 and other places has been so positive.
I do have to say, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not being facetious. I actually don't know why. I think obviously Sony's an incredibly smart company. I've been here for a long time. I really like Sony and love Sony. But I don't get why game companies in general don't. It's like the release schedules just seem confusing to me. In movies, it's like they'll spread their stuff out, and if a movie's coming out that's similar to another movie, they'll shift when that movie comes out to guarantee more people go to see it. And in games, it's just like, hey, it's December, everybody pile on. Hey, it's March, end of the fiscal year, everybody pile on. And maybe as a global decision for the company, that's good. I don't know. But I know for individual games, it's a pretty brutal way to release a game. I mean, I would love to see this come out like in May or something when the market's pretty bare. But yeah, we don't really have that choice, which is unfortunate. But I think we'll still do okay.
Sort of a trial by fire.
I think a lot of companies are.
You're right.
I think a lot of companies are trying to get away from the big Christmas release now because it is so crowded. There's just if you're not one of the top 3 games, you're just not going to get any attention at all.
But that's anything. I mean, the rental market also. It's the whole industry is just really, really hard. I mean, right now in terms of selling games, and I don't know if there's a big shakeup coming. I don't know if there's a crash coming. I don't know if nothing's coming. It's all just going to stay the same, and who knows? But yeah, you're right. If you're not one of those big couple of games, you're kind of screwed. There's not much of a second-tier market. You either sell millions or you don't.
Yeah, it's very hard to be that unknown game that just sort of comes out of nowhere. It happens, but it's so rare.
Yeah.
It definitely happens, and then it becomes a franchise, which is what we're trying for with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be great if that happened. I love this guy. I love Kronos the Titan.
Kronos.
This was awesome.
Yeah,
I was so happy when I saw them turn this animation, and I was just like, oh, that's so cool.
I think the people who did this animation really got into this sequence and really just went to town on it, and it shows. Anytime we had external vendors or even people in team who were inspired, the quality of the production just skyrocketed.
Well, that's the trick.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you inspire?
Yeah.
Them all the time.
Keep them as far away from Dave Jaffe as possible.
Lord, I swear to God.
Have them work directly
I
with
hate
Alex
you, Alex.
Stein.